Have you ever wondered why you believe what you believe? Hi, it's Calvin Smith here, and welcome to Creation Basics, where our goal is to make God's creation part of your everyday conversation. And today's question is, how do you know what you know? That might sound like a bit of a funny question, but let me explain why it's so important to be able to defend the Christian worldview. Because many times, atheists and Bible skeptics, of course, will accuse Christians of being brainwashed into believing the Bible. And, it's only because we were taught this stuff from when we were little kids and by authority figures that they accept this stuff and so on. So let me tell you a story that relates to the topic. As you can imagine, I've rarely had a chance to speak at public schools here in Canada over the last 20 years of speaking on the whole creation evolution debate. Matter of fact, I've only ever spoken twice at public high schools. But anyway, one time I was invited to speak to the grade 11 and 12 high school philosophy class at a public school in Southern Ontario. Not because the teacher was a Christian, he was actually a lapsed Catholic atheist at this point. But anyway, he wanted to be open-minded and allow for, another view to be put forward other than evolution. So during my presentations, most of the students they weren't Christians, a few were, but most were very polite, except for this one fellow who walked right up to me as I was setting up my laptop and projector and looked at me and said, "Oh, so I guess it's prayer time today, is it?" Anyway, I just shrugged and settled into my talk, and I told him who I was. I was a Christian, what I believed, that God created, I didn't hold to evolution, etc. And I was going to explain, I explained that at any point in the presentation, if they had a question, they could just raise their hand and ask me whatever they wanted to. So I was about 3 minutes into my talk when this fellow I mentioned shot his hand up and said, "Well, what about carbon dating?" And I was like, "Ooh, never had that one before." And so I gave an answer and moved on, and he stuck up his hand again and he said, "Yeah, but what about dinosaurs?" The typical questions that we get asked when we go out and present. So after a few of these, he was kind of grumbling and, would suck his teeth every now and then and fidget, obviously upset. So I just said, "Hey, this is no big deal. We're just having a discussion here, sharing some ideas and opinions, and you have your ideas and I have mine, and that's fair." And I said, "Look, do you just think that Christians believe what they believe because of what they've been taught without really thinking it through? I mean, we just go to some big building every now and then and somebody walks up to the front and they open up this big book and they start teaching from it and everybody just believes what they say?" And he looked at me and he said, "Well, yeah." And I said to him, "Well, that's really interesting because that kind of sounds like your science class." You see, that's exactly how I grew up here in Canada. Going to state-run schools, I just went to this big building every now and then, and this bell would ring, and I'd walk into this room, and somebody would start coming up the front and teaching from this big book, and for the most part, I just believed whatever they'd say. They were the learned and I was the learnee, so to speak. And by the time I was 15, with no Christian background, I had fully bought into the humanistic, naturalistic teaching of the story of evolution being about how everything came into existence. That God didn't exist, he was just a construct of the mind. Basically full-blown agnostic atheism. All because of what I'd been taught by authority figures and accepted. So everyone's going to be brainwashed, so to speak. It's just, what type of information are you being brainwashed with, and are you going to accept? What's your authority, the word of fallible man or the word of the Creator God who knows everything and has revealed truth to us? So how do you know what you know? Because what you've been taught by authority figures and accepted. Hey folks, Calvin here. I know you've heard it all before. Subscribe, hit the buttons, all that stuff. But here's the thing. Think of it as if you're donating to our Answers in Genesis Canada advertising campaign without having to spend a dime. With the algorithms set up the way they are, it's kind of like getting media platforms that are often quite unfriendly to Christian content to promote gospel outreach for free. Wise as serpents, gentle as doves. So subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, share the content, click the button. I know it's annoying, but it really helps.